Greetings and welcome to welladjustedliving.com, where we talk about mind and body self-reliance. And boy, on the short list of mind self-reliance certainly is the idea of asking good questions, because good questions create great results in life. And Western society and Western thinking tends to generate the idea of always having the answer. And sometimes we don't always have the answer. And that's where we come from perhaps a more Eastern perspective, and we start to formulate questions. And you ever notice how teachers love hearing demonstrations of clear thinking and the desire to master a subject on the part of the student? Because they asked a really good question, not a dumb question, not an inconsequential question, a really good question. So there's time on task, and there's the right time on task, and there's questions, and then there's good questions. So Eastern philosophy recognizes and prizes that idea of a good question. And when we phrase life desires and challenges into questions, we generate this environment of stimulating answers. And that's what we want ultimately, is the answer. But sometimes we got to start with the question. And questions, the good ones, come in all shapes and sizes. And the good question really correlates to the what's so of something. Some are broad and ongoing, perhaps universal in scope, like, oh, how can I get along with my partner, or get along better with my coworkers or the neighbor next door? Others are more short-term and highly specific, such as what's the best option for landscaping the backyard? And other questions identify core behaviors that we seek to change and modify, like, how can I stay more focused? So the idea is that we're going to turn what we don't know or the unknown into a question and replace self-incriminating judgment with curiosity. And this falls into line with some of the videos about the self-reliant creative process, where we start with the idea, we suspend the judgment at the beginning. It's the same thing here. We start, suspend having to know the answer, and allowing questions to come forth, and organizing ourselves as a result of that. The good questions establish greater context, points of reference, and they provide a sense of direction. And they ease resistance, and you make yourself available from both obvious and hidden sources. So let's ask the quality question, whatever we have going on in life this 5 minutes, and watch the universe go to work on our behalf, and it would be glad to. But it's got to know what it's working with, and that's what the question provides. So really the functions of good questions are, it shows you where you are in your process, because based on the level of the question, it kind of determines a sense of mastery or understanding relative to a subject. It certainly will keep you aligned with your purpose and your goals, and it absolutely makes you available to receive from all sources. And there's an element of asking a question and letting the answer come that requires faith and trust. But when we lack outside help, we sort of become an island unto ourselves. And a sense of surrender must exist to truly let anything go. I mean, think about it. If you were to go to throw a ball, like a football, a baseball, a basketball, you actually have to let it go for it to do its job. You have to release it first before it's in motion. So you ask the question, you put it out there, you release it, it comes into motion. And in time, your good questions become like a think tank, and they improve as you practice them. And you can think in terms of never stop asking, such as, how can it get any better than this? Or what else is possible here? Or how do I have to be for such and such to show up in my life? Here's one when we really want to take a look. What am I pretending not to know about this situation? Or is there another way to look at this? Or what's the next step in this process? How about I wonder? Or how can I? Or what's behind my issue with? Or how can I improve my ability with? See, asking questions will keep your curiosity alive. And I was born asking questions. I can remember as a child, we'd have these gatherings at the house, and the relatives are coming over and they're adults, and I'm thinking I'm going to be an adult someday, and they sure talk a lot about the job and the government, money, and somewhat about religion and a few other topics. So I figured, here's a grassroots education, and I'd start asking my questions. And I'd go up to the first one and ask 3 or 4 and on to the next one and the next one. And I was just gathering all my little, I was like a little bee collecting pollen. And the interesting thing was about, I don't know, half an hour into all this business, when people saw me coming, they had to go to the bathroom. So the moral of the story is you can only ask so many questions, but people do like to talk about themselves. So feel free to fire away. Just be mindful when you're engaging somebody else versus the universe when enough is enough. But it's very serving. It certainly serves me working with clients because they know no matter what they say, or what's going on, what today's topic might be, Will's going to be asking questions. And as we go along, they're going to get deeper and more probing and more to the point. So keep your curiosity alive by identifying the issues you have and rephrasing them into questions. And by the way, do you know that Da Vinci was considered one of the most curious people who ever lived? I find that fascinating. And curiosity is a critical part of staying young, because we get older and we think we know everything, or we know everything about blank and blank, and we stop the exploration of life. And as long as we're asking good questions, that exploration continues until we take our last breath. There's also something about the good question that can be very deeply identifying about what's really going on for us. An example comes to mind of a client who called me, and she was fairly upset because she had lost her appointment book. And this is a long time ago, before the technology tsunami. And we actually wrote stuff down on a little calendar and you carried it with you. And well, isn't that something? And that's what she did, and she lost it, and she was upset, understandably. But then she said, I seem to get upset untowardly when I lose something. And I said, let's turn that into a good question. And what's behind my issue over losing things? Lo and behold, she finally got what it was. When she was age 7, her parents got divorced. That was the first thing she lost. The family's time together. And that tended to get restimulated, that event, every time she would lose something. I remember an incident where my oldest sister got married. This guy named Larry, and I was fine with that because here's a new person on the block and I get all my questions. And I remember one time I got into this hellacious discussion about calories in British thermal units. Maybe that's what we were studying in school. I don't know. And at one, he just looked at me and he's like, why the hell do you want to know this? And I thought, yeah, why the hell do I want to know that? And sometimes you can ask questions in a way that will take you off the subject because you got too many subjects. So we need to keep it focused on. That took me a very, very, very long time because curiosity would just overcome me. And I would just want to know this and this and this. And at the end of the day, you got to say, well, what does this apply? How does this apply? Do you really need to know this? And I think this is critical. When we start going on places like YouTube, imagine that, to start finding out about things and how to fix stuff and home repair, what about this, or learning this or learning that, because there's so many choices, you can just go berserko. So be clear about the questions you have going in. In other words, what do I need to know? And once I know that, then let me carry on with what I'm doing. So we ask a good formulated question. And we also want to know our most pressing questions. And let's say you've got something primary engaging you, a project, and maybe right before bed you'd consider reviewing the project briefly and the most important question or questions you have around it. And that may reflect what is the best action for you to take tomorrow, and the answers would help propel you towards better time on task. So you ponder that a little bit, you let it go, and then say your prayers or whatever you do, and release the thinking, let it go, and go sleep. And when you wake up, before you start taking an outside input like checking Facebook or the TV or the phone, you mentally review that pressing question, see what emerges. And you can do this before taking a break, right before meditation, anytime, really, so long as you let go. And the cool thing is, the good question doesn't cost any money. And you don't need anyone's permission. And if you fall out of the practice of it, you can return anytime. Because the good question comprises a standard issue tool in the toolbox of your self-development. I mean, it's right up there with hammers and pliers and wrenches and all that stuff. So, and there it is, the homework bell. And you can probably tell me what the homework is today. I hope so. And that would be, yes, you are correct. What are your good questions? What good questions do you have? Not today, right now. Yeah. What do you want to be working on? Let's let the universe and everybody help us with what we're working on. So think of a few good questions. I'd love it if you would comment down below about what they are for you after you like and subscribe to the channel. And let's keep on going, because we're going to be enjoying the game of life.